study that focuses on union involvement in clean energy projects and programs in Illinois. And we're fortunate to be joined by a panel of union representatives with firsthand experience with clean energy work, training, and advocacy. A few notes of housekeeping. We will have a presentation for the first half of the webinar. And so we just ask that you stay muted. And if any questions do arise that you'd like to raise for discussion later, feel free to add those to the chat. I'll start by presenting some background on the study, summarize our findings and policy recommendations. Then we'll hear reactions from our panelists and have a broader discussion about the implications of this research for energy policy and workforce development. I want to start by acknowledging my Climate Jobs Institute colleagues, many of whom are on this Zoom. Linda Larson, Roshan Krishnan, and Emily Gusky helped carry out the research and put together our results, including co-authoring the final report. And I believe Linda is going to share a link to that study website where you can download the full report, policy brief, and learn more about our research. We also had assistance from Jonathan Hettinger, our communications director, Haesung Yang, one of our postdoctoral research associates, and additional input and assistance from Professor Robert Bruno, members of our Climate Jobs Advisory Council, and of course, many labor leaders, trainers, and advocates who participated in this research in some capacity. Why did we do this study? Discussions about clean energy or green jobs often treat them as distinct from fossil fuel jobs. But a lot of clean energy work is performed by the building trades who work on a variety of projects, from wind and solar farms to nuclear power, coal and gas plants, refineries, and other construction projects unrelated to energy. Research that only looks at dedicated solar installers, for example, misses much of the workforce that is building solar farms, particularly in Illinois. Building trades play a unique role in Illinois' energy system. They not only supply workers to perform all sorts of energy-related work, they also enhance the quality of these jobs through collective bargaining and advocacy in the public arena. That helps influence energy and labor policies for the broader industry. This is an exploratory study that tried to understand how the trades are participating in or preparing for clean energy transition, as well as what are the challenges and opportunities they see with this work. Now, Illinois is a particularly important case for understanding the role of union labor in clean energy, because we have a highly unionized construction industry, nearly 30% of construction workers, compared with less than 12% nationally. And union involvement is much higher in energy industries and larger construction projects, particularly those that receive public funding. Unions in Illinois are also participate in the vast majority of registered apprenticeship programs, which are jointly administered with signatory employers. Nearly 96% of apprentices in Illinois, compared with only 2/3 nationally. They've also seen greater growth in union construction apprentices, which are up 59% since 2015, compared with 52% in Illinois. Now, in order to understand the involvement of building trades in clean energy, we used a variety of methods. We wanted to contact and hear directly from state, regional, and local union officers and apprenticeship coordinators, focusing on the 5 largest building trades, as well as 2 smaller specialty trades that we know have important role in the clean energy build out. These are listed roughly in order of size of their apprentices. Contacting these union representatives took a variety of forms. We initially started with emails that included links to an online survey with a couple dozen questions, some of them quite detailed. That didn't end up being the best way to collect some of this information, although we did receive some useful details from 8 survey respondents. Most of our participants joined focus groups where we were able to have more in-depth discussion with representatives from multiple trades or regions of Illinois, as well as individual or small group interviews where we were able to collect additional information about training programs and skills involved in clean energy. We also did a couple tours of training facilities in order to see directly the classrooms, apprentices, and equipment involved. And we did some analysis of data from federal sources, namely the Registered Apprenticeship Partners Information Database System, in order to understand the broader context for this work. What we found is that the building trades work in many sectors of clean energy. This chart is our attempt to summarize the involvement of these larger trades in some of the major sectors of clean energy, from solar, battery storage, wind power, as well as energy efficiency in buildings, whether HVAC or insulation, electric vehicle infrastructure, and emerging technologies, including carbon capture or hydrogen. Now, every trade we studied has some involvement in multiple sectors. Of course, this involvement varies greatly. As you can imagine, plumbers and pipe fitters have extensive involvement in hydroelectric, however, more limited involvement in areas of battery storage, for example, around cooling technologies. What's important to recognize is that this breadth of involvement is growing opportunities for building trades in Illinois, but it still accounts for a relatively small share of the total work hours for their members, between 2 and 17%, according to respondents in our survey. Solar sector stands out for offering some of the greatest growth opportunities for union labor, particularly in more rural areas where there may be fewer other infrastructure or large commercial projects. However, the nuclear industry in Illinois has a long history of providing a reliable source of work for the building trades, particularly related to maintenance and refueling, which often happens on a predictable schedule. And we heard, for example, from an electrician in Northern Illinois that there's a lot more people on site working at power plants and nuclear, for example, than you have after a wind or solar facility has been built. Now, this growing involvement in clean energy work is also reflected in the training that the building trades offer, both for their apprentices and for members in the form of continuing education. We heard that apprenticeship classes increasingly incorporate clean energy topics, either as dedicated classes or as a module or work opportunity in the course of an apprenticeship. However, and some trades do provide extensive specialized training in particular technologies. Um, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers stands out for really comprehensive offerings from a summer solar pre-apprenticeship program um, to a year-long certificate program offered in partnership with Triton College, other required uh, solar training in their apprenticeship program, and optional training and exams for the North American Board Certified Energy Practitioners, or NABCEP certification. For the electricians and other trades that we studied, however, they emphasized safety and well-rounded craft training as the foundation for working in clean energy. As we heard from this carpenter, they train well-rounded carpenters to work on whatever jobs are coming up. And that is reflected in a banner that we saw as well at the insulators training facility, which is that safety protects people, quality protects jobs. And this orientation towards well-rounded skills, being able to work in clean energy as well as conventional fossil fuel applications, reflects a broader strategy and orientation for the building trades. And this is, we think, a key finding that is not always appreciated by people outside of the construction industry. And that is that the building trades work to sustain careers in an industry where technologies and demand for labor is ever changing. So these are a couple quotes from different trades that both echo a similar approach to working with contractors, with the employers who are signatory to their collective agreements in order to understand what projects are they anticipating, what is the demand in terms of the number of work hours and the skills involved, and to adapt the apprenticeship enrollments and the training that they offer in order to meet that demand. And I just want to underscore the second quote that they don't want to just admit apprentices that are only going to work part-time and be on the layoff list. They want to make sure that they're offering full-time, sustainable careers for workers. And they don't want to jump the gun on technologies without an established market. That approach to measured growth and adapting to market demand also helps us understand the support for clean energy policy that we hear from many of these trades, particularly in Illinois. They're generally supportive of policies that help create work for their members, whether that takes the form of public investment or incentives for renewable energy development or greater energy efficiency. At the same time, they're wary of policies that prohibit fossil fuels or set what they view as premature timelines for transition to clean energy. Generally, they advocate for strong labor standards that can take the form of prevailing wages, project labor agreements that promote union participation, particularly in larger projects, and apprenticeship requirements. And these standards help uphold the working conditions and maintain the livelihoods that their members have achieved, in part through their work with fossil fuels and other infrastructure projects. They expressed support for just transition policies, which means providing protections and helping mitigate the harms of transition for workers and communities that depend on fossil fuels. Another important area of policy interest in Illinois has been promoting equity, um, ensuring that public investment and support for clean energy development benefits the Illinois workforce more broadly, particularly groups who historically are underrepresented in construction and building trades, as well as the energy sector more broadly. And we heard from all the unions that we studied um, efforts to diversify their membership through outreach to various community organizations, community colleges, high schools, as well as organizations that work with specific populations that may be eligible for some of the equity policies and targets that the state has set. However, there are barriers that persist, particularly related to transportation, childcare, and background checks for certain projects. Transportation was something that we heard a lot, particularly in the context of large-scale renewable energy projects, which require a lot of land and for that reason tend to be located in more remote areas. They're difficult to access without having your own vehicle or other reliable transportation. We also heard from participants that pre-apprenticeship programs help them reach workers who may not otherwise be exposed to the building trades, but they don't always lead to an apprenticeship or a career in the trades. And again, the orientation of many of these apprenticeships is not just to train more solar installers or bring people on for a specific project, but to ensure that they're on a pathway where they can become more well-rounded craftspeople and have a career through the ups and downs of different technologies. Given this orientation of building trades in Illinois to ensuring that there's continuity even through transition to clean energy, continuity in the form of upholding the standards of work and sustaining longer-term careers for their members. We think that this has important implications for policies in Illinois, as well as more broadly. And we recommend that the state continue to strengthen labor standards and also look to the enforcement capacity that's needed to ensure compliance with those standards. We heard from several participants that project labor agreements were particularly helpful in supporting union participation in clean energy and also promoting coordination across trades. However, there were concerns about the extent of coordination in terms of which trades were involved in which technologies, types of projects. We also heard concerns about projects not complying with prevailing wage requirements or claiming to comply, reporting data that wasn't borne out in their actual labor practices. And we think this points to a need for increased enforcement capacity for the Illinois Department of Labor. We also recommend that state and workforce partners consider ways to improve access and support, not only to get workers into pre-apprenticeship programs and potentially an apprenticeship, but also to provide more wraparound supports so that they can complete programs and be retained over the longer term. And so this is something that we think does require more research to understand what the best practices are, for example, around mentoring efforts. But we think there are a lot of opportunities to improve coordination and align some of the pre-apprenticeship program offerings with the uh, entry requirements into union apprenticeships. In terms of the actual work of developing clean energy projects, we think there's a lot of opportunities to streamline that development. This has been a topic of discussion both at the state and national level around reducing administrative delays in permitting, siting, and interconnection to the electric grid. Generally, prioritizing implementation would go a long way to helping trades maintain a reliable pipeline of work. We heard several participants refer to a solar coaster, for example, and projects that are supported by policies that might have an uncertain progress and be put on hold during long reviews for their permitting, as well as more recently uncertainty and a threatened withdrawal of federal incentives for those projects. And we think Illinois can play an important role in helping expand and maintain investment in clean energy to provide more stability in a volatile policy environment, and to involve the trades in longer term planning for workforce development, recognizing that a union apprenticeship is the best road in many of these industries to good quality jobs and a more sustainable career. As I've already mentioned, this study identified many areas for further research, some of which that we're already undertaking. We think there's need for more in-depth studies of specific industries, and we have active projects looking at the solar workforce, Illinois coworkers and communities, and building energy efficiency, including heating, cooling. And in these studies, we're hoping to compare union job quality and workforce demographics with non-union segments of these same industries, recognizing that there's wide variance between the union jobs that we focused on in this study and the non-union jobs that, particularly in smaller residential segments of the industry, are the norm. We also had suggestions from our participants to compare the benefits of policies like project labor agreements, not only to the workers themselves, but to the broader public, looking at costs and completion times, for example, with solar projects, with or without such agreements. And as I've already mentioned, analyzing compliance, looking at data from certified transcripts of payroll, other administrative records that the state already collects, can help us better understand where there are gaps or potential violations of some of these labor standards that Illinois has committed to create good quality jobs in clean energy. Now, as I've suggested, this is just a set of highlights and generalities about trades that we recognize differ in many respects, and both in the types of projects and the regions where they operate. And so we wanted to make sure to include the voices of labor representatives themselves who can provide a fuller picture of their involvement with clean energy work and fill in some of the gaps in this initial study. So we're joined today by Dane Simpson, who is director of the Great Plains Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust. He'll start off with some reactions to the report. We'll also hear from Robert Padier, Executive Director of Illinois Renewable Energy Fund, also Director of Renewable Energy with IBUW Local 134. Tom McGrath, Business Manager for the Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers Local 17. And Mia Korinki was Campaign Mobilization Director with Climate Jobs Illinois, affiliated with the Illinois AFL-CIO. So let me turn it over to Dane to get his initial thoughts, and then we'll go through this list of panelists before having some further questions for discussion.
Sure. Thanks, Peter. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. I thought the report was very timely, considering the new energy push that we've seen at the state level, and I also greatly appreciate the results of the study showing that what I already knew was that labor and labor apprenticeship programs are really truly the gold standard of training our next generation's workforce. I think that really was driven home in this report. Like Peter said, I'm our renewable energy director for North Central Illinois. We represent over 10,000 construction craft workers in 35 North Central counties. We've seen exactly what the report showed is that our apprenticeship program is running at maximum capacity. We've increased our numbers, maybe not quite to the 52% increase that you're seeing nationally, but we have seen an uptick of 15 to 20%. We also, prior to the legislation, we were probably one of the more diverse trade unions in Illinois. But through this, we've doubled down on a lot of our outreach programs and really pushed to ensure that we're hitting the goals of the equitably inclusive personnel components of the legislation. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thanks, Dane. Robert, do you want to offer your reactions? And anything else you want to say about your involvement in this sector?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. First off, I want to thank the Climate Jobs Institute for performing this report and all the research associated with it. It's really important that we look at the clean energy space and how projects are constructed in any state, but especially in Illinois. We're going to have the building trades involved, and we have been involved, IBEW specifically, we've been involved in clean energy for over 25 years, training our members on it, but more importantly, doing the work that not only individual homeowners and business owners rely on, but increasingly that our utility grid as a whole is relying on. And we look forward to continuing that process as time moves on. But just to introduce myself, Director of Renewable Energy for IBEW Local 134. We're the electricians union for Cook County. We have 12,000 members. Our apprentices all receive solar training in the first and second year of their apprenticeship. And then we're fully accredited through NABCEP, so they are getting the educational requirements for advanced certification. But more importantly, I want to mention my other role, which is executive director of the Illinois IBEW Renewable Energy Fund. So when we saw this big boom in solar come into our state, it was really after the passage of the Future Energy Jobs Act. And one thing that Illinois did right compared to other states that were advancing renewable energy is not only did we create incentive programs that are reliable, we put money aside for workforce development. And we knew with the added work that was going to be created within our state that we needed to make sure that the workforce was here and local, benefiting our communities in the state of Illinois. So IBW Local 134 applied for and received the Craft Apprenticeship Grant, which is a workforce development program authorized by that bill. And with that, we operate statewide in partnership with 18 IBW local unions, 5 high schools, 5 community colleges, and I think we're up to 9 community-based organizations at this point. We have an MOU pending at this moment. So either 8 or 9, depending on the status of that MOU. So we choose our partners based on geography, based on the populations they serve, and the extending the opportunity for all residents of Illinois. But again, I want to thank the Climate Jobs Institute team for putting this report together.
Thanks, Robert, and thanks for all your assistance and conducting that research and letting us tour your facility, which was featured prominently in the photos included in this presentation. We also had assistance from Tom McGrath with the heat and frost insulators, Local 17. Tom, do you want to offer your reactions?
Sure, Peter. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear? Okay. Thanks for having me, first of all, and thank you to the Climate Jobs team for taking the time to come and spend some time with us at Local 17 to tour our training facility and to spend the day with us to let us educate you about the heat and frost insulators. We just got done celebrating our 125-year anniversary as an organization, and we take a lot of pride in trying to educate the public right now, as far as let everyone know that we've always been energy conservationists from day one. That's heat and frost insulators. We insulate mechanical systems. We're there to save money. And now I think the message that has been getting out there through programs like the Climate Institute and Climate Jobs Illinois, we've been able to start educating more people about not just energy conservation, saving energy, but the carbon footprint, to try and make sure that people are understanding, how, the pollution factor that mechanical insulation comes into effect to have your systems running properly for longevity for their system. Currently, our apprenticeship program has been exceeding. We've probably grown about 20 to 25% over the past, I'd say, 2 years. We've seen through all of these projects that are going throughout northeastern Illinois. Heat and Frost 17, we cover 23 counties in Illinois and 3 in Northwest Indiana. We've seen an abundance of work in retrofit work. And then obviously with the boom in data centers, we play a big role in that as well. So thanks for having me here today. We appreciate everything and the work that you guys are doing. Look forward to spend some time with you.
Thanks, Tom. Mia, do you want to offer your reactions, and then we'll get to some other discussion questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that leaves me last. I just first want to thank, Peter and Jonathan and Linda Larson for including us in this presentation and in this research process. I represent the Climate Jobs Illinois Coalition, of which many of our unions are actually present on this call, which is great to see. We're a coalition of 13 different unions across the state. We represent, all the working men and women, including electricians, laborers, heat frost insulators, but also, teachers and service workers and folks who want to see a clean energy economy in Illinois. So yeah, I think, reading through the report, I was really impressed with kind of the authenticity and the accuracy related to what we're hearing from members across all different, trades and sectors and unions. I think, what the report really quantifies is what we've been hearing for years, right? Is that unions provide a stable career, a career path, not just one job, working on, a solar field or one job on a wind farm. It provides a career opportunity. And I think the cross training that's really highlighted in the report, and that each of our union affiliates will be able to share if you take a tour or connect with our training programs. I think that really helps to build stability across the clean energy market, especially in this kind of unstable time that we have. I know there's also questions in the chat. There's one on specifically related to CEGA graduates, and I'm happy to, I could wait on that or take it now, whatever works best. But we do have a workforce program as well that runs in tandem with a lot of the apprenticeship programs that the unions here represent as well.
Thanks, Pia. And yes, we would love to have anyone add questions to the chat, and we'll have a chance to respond to that towards the end of the hour. I did want to ask any of the panelists if they could comment on what are some of the biggest misconceptions about the building trades you encounter, particularly in your work with government officials or community partners. It struck me as someone who doesn't have a background in construction or building trades that these jobs are different from a lot of other jobs where people might work for the same employer year round, in the same industry or types of technologies. And that's just not the case for many of your members. So I'm curious, you want to speak to that or other misconceptions that people might have?
Sure, I'll jump in first here. I've heard two or three as we go around advocating for specifically solar projects, is that they are low-skilled projects that are just plug-and-play systems. Couldn't be further from the truth. We've seen low-road contractors from out of state come in and utilize low-skill workers, and their projects typically aren't successful. Whereas we see union projects that are done on time, done on budget, with pre-apprenticeship and our DBE goals. The other misconception that I've noticed is that union labor is more expensive. Again, totally bust. With the labor protections in this industry and the prevailing wage, our wages are prevailing wage. Our health insurance is covered under prevailing wage. Our retirement savings programs are covered under prevailing wage, as well as our training programs. So if anything, I would say that our union contractors typically come less expensive than non-union contractors in the prevailing wage markets. And lastly, diversity. That unions are only active in urban settings and not rural communities. I cover 35 counties. Most of my counties are rural setting. Most of these projects, specifically in the community solar space, are rural settings as well. And we are able to reach out to those local communities, work with their workforce-based development programs, the WIB boards, the pre-apprenticeship training programs, high school counselors. We have so many different points into a community that we can touch, that we're actively working on to get those folks on these projects in rural counties.
Thanks, Dane. Would anyone else like to dispel or address some common misperceptions?
Sure, I'll chime in, Peter. First, I want to second a lot of what Dane said there. That's absolutely true. Across the board what he said. But one thing I will definitely add is going back to the value of the project and the union workforce versus a non-union workforce. When you're working with the locals within our state, you are benefiting the communities of our state, not just for the job being built, but where those wages are spent. And we really need to emphasize that if we're using state funding to support this infrastructure, that funding should be staying within the state. This is ratepayer and taxpayer funds from the state of Illinois, and partnering with local contractors within the state of Illinois is the way you do that. There are developers that try to cut corners, going to, bringing in contractors from other areas, trying to claim their prevailing wage is what they have to pay in our jurisdiction. But as Dane said, it's our wages, it's our packages that set the standard here in the state of Illinois. So if you want to ensure compliance with prevailing wage, you want to get it done right the first time, you work with the building trades here in Illinois. But another thing I want to bring up is there's a major misconception that this is a new industry and therefore we need a new workforce. I mentioned before in my introduction, the IBW has been building solar, battery storage, wind farms, all renewable energy for decades now. Other trades are involved as well. This is nothing new. Maybe the only thing new for our state is the volume of projects. And, there are, areas of our state where we had to revamp some of our apprenticeship programs to bring more numbers in to meet the demand. But the training is still there, the quality is there, and again, that local workforce still remains. And that leads me to the other common misconception is that the opportunities to join a union are not available to everyone. All of the building trades are constantly recruiting from all communities across the state and across this country. We have partnerships with schools. We attend job fairs, career fairs. We're on workforce boards. We're constantly spreading the word about our programs and the application process. Now, some have, different times a year they're available, but that getting that information and the requirements is what's key. And I want to applaud all of us on really what we're doing there to try to extend those opportunities and really make sure people understand they're there. I'm someone that came into the electrical industry not knowing anything about it. And it was just by chance that I found out about the IBW in another state. I wasn't even living in Chicago at the time, but I knew when I moved back here, the first thing I was doing was applying for our apprenticeship because of the connection I happened to make through a community college out in a different state. So we just need to make sure that's one area I think we could all continue our efforts. We're doing a lot of great work, but we can always do more to make sure that we're reaching more and more people across the state.
Thanks, Robert. I appreciate that. It really reinforces something that I mentioned briefly, but we discuss more in the report is the kind of continuity with the clean energy work and other areas that the building trades work in, both in terms of how they train and prepare members for that work, and how they use hiring halls, collective agreements, project labor agreements, other long-standing tools to try to sustain members' work in those construction industry, which has always had its ups and downs and booms and busts. So one question I did want to raise is how clean energy work is different, if at all, from other areas of construction that you're involved in. We've heard, particularly around policy, that there's been this drastic swings with changes in, federal government and, to some extent, sort of priorities at the state level. So I'm curious, if any of you want to comment on, what are the, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing, and how might your experience from other sectors translate into addressing that? And Mia has her hand up, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I will. Okay, so I'll preface this by saying that I started my career in the labor movement working with teachers and with nurses. And so I will definitely let the other panelists speak to their decades of experience in and around clean energy. But I will say over the last, 5, 6 years working in the energy space, it's become very clear to me that clean energy is not that different from other infrastructure work that we do, and that there are a number of trade folks who are working on clean energy projects, but they might also be doing an electrical in a high rise. We have laborers who are doing highway work. We have operating engineers who are doing heavy highway work, and then they're also doing, maybe geothermal drilling. And so I will say from a policy perspective, which is where a lot of my work focuses, our goal is really to make sure that workers, regardless of which sector they're working in, they have the same protections. And contractors are held to the same standards that we would hold any other contractor in Illinois. And that workers have those safeguards, and as far as safety, as far as labor standards, as far as being paid fairly for the work that they're doing, regardless of which project they're on. And I think you hit on something a little earlier, is that in the trades, the union follows the worker. The union is not tied to the workplace. And so I will definitely give a lot of props to our local union affiliates, because they've worked really, really hard to make sure that wherever their workers go, they are protected in the same way that they would be on any other public works project. And I think as far as energy policy, it's really important for us to start thinking about clean energy as basic infrastructure.
Thanks, Mia. Tom, do you want to speak to this? You emphasized you've been working in clean energy and energy conservation for a long
Sure,
time.
Peter.
Is there anything different
Sure.
about
Well,
this moment?
clean energy, that's just kind of what we do. Anything that the insulators are involved with, whether it being in a commercial setting, an industrial setting in a refinery or a nuclear facility, or even any of these new data centers, it's all pretty much going to be driven upon, energy conservation. That's pretty much what we do every single day. What we do see are, some of the challenges in with not just local or state politics, but federal, the projects of, the balancing act, balancing the workforce, balancing how many people that we think we're going to have to accommodate for our signatory contractors. At any given time, we can, some of these facilities are deciding that they're going to move forward or they're not going to move forward. And that proposes a lot of challenges for us. We're about 1,000 members. And then when we get these demands for these mega projects, for some of these data centers and some of these expansions in power, those challenges to get a good quality workforce in here, trained accordingly, it does bring challenges for us. But we have been able to accommodate, I believe, all of our end users and our contractors. But it does take a lot of time and work.
Thanks, Tom. We've had some questions in the chat. People are interested in hearing more about, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, or CEJA funded programs, which were designed to help expand access to union apprenticeships, and more broadly, just looking to ways that the building trades are continuing to recruit and train more women and workers of color. How can we, the state and labor organizations, help them advance in their careers, beyond just getting in the door? Are there models that you would highlight, from your own work, or sister unions, around mentoring, career development, overcoming barriers such as transportation? Robert, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So this is something I spent a lot of time on, being a FEJA funded program. And then we have the other state funding that comes from CEJA. And sometimes there's some overlap between the two. So reporting gets complicated. So where at first, when the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act was passed, we were advised to continue running our program, building our partnerships, and not work directly with the CEJA, not the grantees and their participants. We have since changed that through negotiations with the DCO to essentially where we go and we can recruit from those programs. So we're not, the issue here is potentially double dipping of state funding and double dipping of reporting the same individual. So essentially what we extend is meeting with participants of the different CEJA funded programs, their cohorts, to explain the benefits of the IBEW, the process of applying, anything they'd want to add into their resume, and building their application process. So we don't directly train with anyone from there because of the potential for cross reporting, but we still always we'll meet with any candidate that's willing to learn more about our opportunities statewide. But you do highlight an issue there when you have state-funded programs, where you may have individuals that jump from one program to a next, and how does that work? And then when you have two different energy bills that created their own workforce development programs, it just gets that much more complicated.
Yes, and now the state has recently passed a new major piece of energy legislation in the Clean and Reliable Grid Act. So definitely coordination and implementation, is another area that we're actively studying and, hoping to inform what the state is doing with those policies. Does anyone else want to comment on this, these questions around equity and best practices? Yeah.
I can share a little bit. So Climate Jobs Illinois, we worked with all of our affiliates to secure grant funding from DCEO, which is the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, under CEJA to run a program called Climate Works. And so we have had about 300 graduates in less than a year that have run through this pre-apprenticeship program, working with an organization called Hire 360, which again coordinates with all of our local union partners, and works really closely alongside the structures that Bob just outlined, to help make sure that we're preparing folks to take their apprenticeship tests, to complete the math portions. We're providing them, stipends if they need boots or tools or childcare or a ride to work. Those kind of very real obstacles that working folks run into. And I can say that program has been pretty successful so far. Of the 300 graduates, I believe 250, 260-ish have been placed in some kind of job training or apprenticeship or education program. So far we're seeing that folks are matriculating through the pre-apprenticeship program and then moving on to career and education opportunities, which is what the state designed the program to do. So I think that's at least one model that's really closely aligned with the union apprenticeship programs that's been successful.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. In the few minutes that we have left, I want to give the panelists opportunity to respond to anything else that came up. We have a question about interconnection delays, connecting some of these clean energy projects to the grid, impacts for your unions, and questions around changes with federal policy. Can Illinois help sustain and ensure that those projects move forward, or what sort of impacts are you going to anticipate? I will say on that question, we put out another report recently based on some listening sessions with union as well as industry representatives, focusing on that specific topic. But sort of final responses or thoughts that you want to share going forward on these topics.
Sure, I can go first.
Dane.
I think, the passing of the Illinois Clean, Reliable Grid Affordability Act really is going to address a lot of the concerns, I guess, that I saw in the chat. I'm a big believer just in general that work solves a lot of people's problems. Having a job really fixes a lot of people's headaches in life in general. That being said, repowering old infrastructure is going to create so many jobs. And what that new act did is, solidify a pipeline of projects for the next 20 plus years. With, I think it was like 3 gigawatts of new solar, community solar, and 4 gigawatts of wind farm. That's a lot of construction jobs. Plus, with all the battery energy solar system or storage systems that are coming online, all that I truly believe will be done utilizing union tradesmen. With the changing of the project labor agreements down to 3 megawatts, with the focusing on equitably eligible contractors and apprenticeship requirements, I think we're in a good place to continue doing the training modules with the cohorts that we're currently doing and really ramping up our apprenticeship programs.
Thanks, Dana. I appreciate that sort of update overview of this rapidly changing landscape, which, our report came out in September and, didn't incorporate some of those latest developments. Robert?
Yeah, one thing I'll add, and it's kind of going to that comment about interconnection, but I think it's really development in general. I think one thing that developers that are bringing projects into our state need to understand is not only do we have that local workforce here where we can get that done here, but that workforce lives in the communities where these projects are being built. And when there are zoning meetings, if the property has to go from agricultural to commercial because you're installing a solar farm, our members can be there. They can advocate for these projects. We have networks across the entire state of Illinois and beyond the workforce. They're all individuals that have lives and families and communities they support too. And just keep that in mind, that when you choose a local workforce, when you choose, the IBW in particular, or all the building trades, that we are stakeholders in these communities, and we'll advocate for these projects if they're being built good.
I appreciate that. And that's a great example of the kind of broader impacts or benefits, that we want to try to capture in future research. Tom, do you want to offer any concluding thoughts?
I just want to touch on real quick. I just left the state building trades when Dane was there, and I know there was some kind of there was a question in the chat regarding some of the federal projects there's a lot of question marks on. I believe that we had a report that was just given to us. They are the National Building Trades is working adamantly on the state of Illinois to try and get some of these hydrogen projects back up on, because currently the administration has decided to put some governors on those and kind of hold them back right now. So I know maybe that could have a little bit of input, but I just want to echo on the saying, using local workers, a local workforce here that participates in their communities and give something back. Local 17, we're always part of getting involved with our communities, and we always want to make sure that everyone knows that out-of-state workers aren't the answer here. We're about local jobs and local people for better lives.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Tom. Mia?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about the collaboration that we've seen across different trades. And I think also just understanding this issue of climate change is one that's not going away. It's not going better. And it's, we're going to have to adjust with or without workers. And I think everybody in this room is focused on adjusting with workers and centering them in the transition. So encouraging policy leaders to think about that first and foremost is really kind of our focus.
Excellent. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's a great note to end on. Let me just thank our panelists again for your important work that you do in this area, and for taking the time to share your perspective with us today. And thanks to all of you for joining this webinar. There's other opportunities to connect with us online and future presentations. So see the chat for more information.